Welcome to Everyday Counseling, a podcast about understanding emotional patterns as they show up in everyday life. In this episode, we're looking at why the same emotional patterns often repeat across different situations, even when the people and settings change. You might notice that when you respond one way at work, another way with a parent, and yet another way with a sibling or a close friend. On the surface, these situations look different. Underneath, the emotional response can feel strangely familiar. This isn't coincidence, it's pattern. Most people develop a small number of emotional roles early on, not because they chase them, but because those roles help them function in the environment they were in. Over time, these roles become automatic. You might recognize being the one who takes responsibility when things feel tense, or the one who stays quiet to avoid conflict, or the one who reacts quickly when something feels unfair. These responses often worked at some point. They helped maintain balance, connection, or safety. The important thing is that these patterns don't stay where they started. A response learned with a parent can show up later at work. A role formed with a sibling can reappear with friends. A way of coping developed early can quietly shape how pressure is handled years later. For example, someone who learned to keep things together at home may become the dependable one at work. They're the person others rely on. They cope well until they don't. When pressure builds, reactions may surface somewhere else, often unexpectedly. Someone who learned early that speaking up led to conflict may find themselves holding back in meetings. The setting is different, but the emotional calculation feels the same. You might notice this in how quickly your body responds in certain situations. Before you've thought it through, you've already adjusted, already reacted, already stepped into a familiar position. What's happening isn't conscious choice, it's recognition. The nervous system recognizes something about the situation, even if it can't name it, and responds in a way it has learned before. This is why people often say, I don't know why I reacted like that. It just happened. The reaction feels immediate because it's patterned. Those patterns can be helpful. They often reflect strengths, reliability, sensitivity, and awareness. The difficulty arises when a pattern that once worked is applied too broadly. What helped in one context can become limiting in another. You might notice that the same role keeps appearing even when it no longer fits. You keep carrying responsibility that isn't yours to carry. You keep withdrawing when it would help to speak. You keep reacting strongly when the situation doesn't require it. Awareness is the first shift, noticing the repetition across contexts, seeing that the reaction isn't about the specific moment alone. This awareness doesn't mean you suddenly change how you respond, it means reactions start to make sense. And when something makes sense, it becomes easier to work with. Over time, people often notice that they have more choice. The old response still appears, but it isn't the only option. The pause between trigger and reaction grows ever so slightly. That pause is where flexibility begins. You might start to recognize when you're slipping into a familiar role, not with judgment, but with curiosity. Is this needed here, or is it just familiar? That question alone can soften the response. As we continue, this leads naturally into understanding why some people feel especially activated in certain situations, and why closeness, authority, or expectation can amplify these patterns. In the next episode, we'll move further into how early emotional learning shapes these roles and why they can feel so hard to shift, even when people are aware of them.